Good day, everyone. Today, our group will present our study entitled Modeling Range of Food and Beverage Services Growing Using Probability-Driven Analysis. Before we begin, here are our group members who contribute to this project. For this introduction, Malaysia food and beverage services sector is an important part of national service economy. It supports household consumption, tourism activity, employment, and the development of small and medium enterprises. After the pandemic, the F&B sector entered a recovery phase, but this recovery was not only about growth, it was also shaped by changes in consumer behavior, digital food delivery, rising input costs, and producer price pressure. Therefore, looking only at this trend is not enough. We also need to understand uncertainty, volatility, and probability of certain outcome. In this study, we use official DOSM quarterly data from Q1 2021 to Q3 2025 with 19 observations. Our main variables are the volume index of food and beverage services, SPPI growth, and restaurant revenue growth. By applying probability-driven analysis, this study aims to transform economic data into practical insight for business owner, investor, and policymaker.
Moving into our literature review, we first anchor our study with the Malaysian macroeconomic reality. As noted by Megasi, the service sector acts as a primary growth catalyst, generating nearly 59% of the national total GDP. Within this framework, local F&B operations serve as a critical macro stabilizer for domestic consumption and cross-ethnic employment. However, ground-level operators face sharp cost-push uncertainty in the post-2021 landscape. To accelerate through operational shock from shifting price inflation, our study utilized the Department of Statistics Malaysia Volume Index of Service. Next, we examine existing hospitality modeling technique. Past local studies, such as Lamri and Subani, typically limit their statistical modeling to simple normality check, like the Shapiro weight test, purely to certify basic linear regression criteria. We argue that relying strictly on a perfectly symmetric normal curve overlook real-world market variability. To capture true continuous risk, our framework balances three specific distributions. First, a symmetric normal baseline to validate our baseline macro aggregate. Second, the log normal distribution, which captures positive skew firm data, accurately representing a market where a few mega franchises heavily skew the right tail over small, independent businesses. And third, the exponential distribution to model stress latency, the asset time at less between major macro shock and real operational contraction. This theoretical deep dive exposed three critical gaps in current literature. Firstly, aggregation bias. Standard framework look broadly at nationwide total GDP, completely masking localized subsector economic shocks. Second, the missing link. There is an explicit quantitative gap bridging macro national indicator directly to granular restaurant level revenue. And lastly, the post-2021 epoch. Pre-pandemic baseline completely failed to accommodate our new structural narrative defined by delivery aggregator dominant, deep level cost pressure, and raging cost push inflation. Our study aimed to bridge this gap by shifting from simple trend to active probability modeling.
Now I'm going to continue with data collection part. For our data collection, we use secondary data from Department of Statistics Malaysia. We obtain two main datasets, the quarterly volume index of services and the services producer price index for the food and beverage sector. We combine these two indices to derive our key variable, restaurant revenue growth. This is calculated by multiplying the volume index by the SPPI, which gives us a measure of nominal revenue growth over time. We use quarterly data, not monthly data. This is because Dawson publishes both volume index and SPPI on a quarterly basis. No official monthly data is available for these indicators. Interpolating into monthly data would create artificial data points that are not real observation. So we choose to work with quarterly data directly. This is also a standard practice in economic research. Our dataset covers the period from Q1 2021 to Q3 2025, giving us a total of 19 quarterly observations. The volume index for Q4 2025 was not available from DOSM at the time of data collection. The most recent available quarter was Q3 2025. Therefore, our analysis covers from Q1 2021 to Q3 2025. So this slide will show what each dataset measures. So for the first one, the volume index of services, it measures the real output volume, which is a quantity of food and beverage service produced excluding the price effect. The second is a service produced price index. It measures the price inflation, which is the changes in the selling price of food and beverage service over time. Lastly is the restaurant revenue growth. It measures the nominal revenue growth. It combines both real volume growth and price inflation to show the total value change in the food and beverage sector.
Moving on to the section 4, which is the distribution theory and the justification part. So as shown in the table, the quarterly volume index and the revenue growth are modeled using the normal distribution, while the SPPI growth is modeled using the log normal distribution. This is because that the volume index and the revenue growth are aggregated economic indicators that are expected to follow a normal pattern, whereas the SPPI growth reflects the inflation behavior and tends to be more right skewed. So this slide shows the differences between the two distributions. The normal distribution is metric and bell-shaped, while the log normal distribution is positively skewed with a longer rectangle. Therefore, the normal distribution is suitable for volume index and the revenue growth, while the log normal distribution is more suitable for the SPPI growth. These are the three main reasons for our distribution choices. First, according to the central limit theorem, national level Dawson data combine thousands of restaurant transactions which cause the individual fluctuation to average out. Second, Malaysia's service sectors contribute about 59% of GDP and food demand remains relatively stable, which make the extreme fluctuation less common. Finally, SPPI growth behave differently because restaurant prices are often sticky downward. Businesses usually increase prices when costs rise but rarely reduce them, which create a right skew pattern. Therefore, the normal distribution is appropriate for volume index and revenue growth, while the log normal distribution is more suitable for SPPI growth.
Now I will start presenting the data application and analysis part. In this part, we got three sections, which are descriptive statistic, normality test, and probability calculation. For descriptive statistic, first we look at this formula for both. You can calculate it manually and using Excel. By the way, we're just using SPSS. This is our instruction in SPSS to calculate. So we can see that in the table, the highest standard deviation is volume index, which is 15.51, and the lowest is 0.68, which is SPPI growth. The highest standard deviation means that the data set is most volatile, and the lowest means that the data set is most stable. Next, we conduct the normality test. First, we look at the H0 data is normally distributed, and the H1 is data set is not normally distributed. Our decision rule is reject the H0 if the p-value is less than 0.05. For this output, we can know that there is only one variable is p-value less than 0.05, which is SPPI growth. So we can conclude that the SPPI growth is not normally distributed and volume and revenue is normally distributed. We also provide visualization for all three variables. As normal, we can see the distribution is well shaped, and the dots from QQ plot is not too far away from the straight line. So for volume index, there's a minor deviation at the lower tail, but overall the linear trend suggests that the volume can be assumed to be approximately normally distributed. And for SPPI growth, the histogram shows a non-normal distribution clearly. The data point of the QQ plot also too far away from the straight reference line. So the SPPI growth is not normally distributed. And last is revenue growth. Revenue growth is relatively symmetric and well shaped. And the QQ plot is not too far away from this straight line, so we can conclude that the revenue growth is normally distributed.
We uses two approach to calculate the probability. This is three questions that we're using. The first is the probability of volume index more than 120. The theoretical approach shows that there's 93% chance, and the empirical approach shows that there's 89% chance that the volume index will exceed 120 in any given quarter. The second question is the probability of SPPI growth more than 5%. Both theoretical and empirical approach show that there is 0% for SPPI to grow more than 5% in any single quarter. The last is the probability of revenue growth less than 0%. The theoretical approach shows that the probability of negative revenue growth is extremely low at 0.36%, and the empirical approach shows that the probability of negative revenue growth is 0%.
Now, let us look at our main findings. We analyzed three variables: volume index, SPPI growth, and revenue growth. Volume index and revenue growth follows a normal distribution, while SPPI growth does not. We found a 93% chance that the volume index remains above 120, and only a 0.36% chance that revenue growth becomes negative. Among the three variables, SPPI growth shows the greatest uncertainty. So next is the interpretation of results. So what do these findings mean? Since volume index and revenue growth are normally distributed, common statistical methods can be applied confidently. SPPI growth is right skew, suggesting that prices tend to rise more easily than they fall, which supports the sticky price theory. In addition, both volume and revenue increased steadily from 2021 to 2025, showing that the industry remains strong and resilient. Overall, the sector demonstrated stable and predictable growth. So our study has several limitations. So first, the sample size is small with only 19 quarters of data. Second, we use national level data, which may hide regional or firm level differences. We also excluded factors such as raw material costs and policy changes. Since the data starts in 2021, comparison with the pre-pandemic period were not possible. So here are some few recommendations for future studies. So future studies could use money or firm level data, compare different regions or business types, and include pre-2021 data for a more comprehensive analysis.
Turning to section 6.4, our research delivers three core academic contributions. First, we fill a major gap in the literature. Instead of relying on broad GDP aggregates, we've established a direct quantitative link between the macro volume index and the macro level restaurant revenue. Second, we validate industry resilience. Our data provides empirical proof of the F&B sector's strong post-2021 recovery, reinforcing its role as the backbone of domestic consumption, which aligns with the recent findings. And third, we extend existing theories. We validate the real-world application of the sticky price theory in the Malaysian F&B context and elevate standard normality tests from basic statistical prerequisites into practical tools for business risk assessment. In short, we're bridging the macro-micro divide and translating theoretical economics into actionable real-world business insights.
For the conclusion, this study showed that probability distribution analysis helped us understand Malaysia's food and beverage services sector beyond simple distributive trend. Based on our analysis, the volume index and restaurant revenues grow at approximately normal distribution. This suggests that at national level, F&B activity and revenue performance are relatively stable because many individual business and consumer transactions are combined together. However, SPPI growth does not follow a normal distribution. This indicates that consumer price movements are more asymmetric, which is reasonable because price in F&B sector tend to increase more easier than they decrease when businesses face cost pressure. Our probability result also show a strong sector resilience. The volume index has a strong probability of exceeding 120. SPPI growth has almost zero probability of exceeding 5%, and negative restaurant revenue growth is extremely unlikely. Overall, from Q1 2021 to Q3 2025, Malaysia F&B services sector show strong post-pandemic recovery and resilience. Although the study is limited by 19 quarterly observations, it provides a useful framework for business planning, investment, evaluations, and policy monitoring. So that's all from us. Thank you.